Hello, good evening. I'm Oral Gibbs, and welcome to Speaking of Everything. And with me this evening, I have Dr. Arduin. Dr. Arduin is a lawyer, and she is also the first ombudsman for St. Maarten. But this evening, she is here on Speaking of Everything to speak in the capacity as a lawyer. We invited her to speak about the problems we are confronted now on St. Maarten with timeshare. And there are many timeshare owners that feel that government have no interest in their problems, which is not really true. But tonight we will speak with her as a lawyer and the person who did PhD doctoral dissertation, right, in timeshare.
Yes. I'm an expert on timeshare.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Arduin, for being my guest here this evening on the program.
Mr. Gibbs, it's always my pleasure to be on your program to speak with you and your audience.
Now that we've had this problem for the last few years now, it just blew up again with Caravanserai, where all these owners feel that there is no protection, there's no legislation. Now, when you did your thesis, what, 10, 12 years ago?
Oh, no. Time flies, more than 20 years ago. Yes.
Can you imagine that low?
Yeah,
wow.
As a matter of fact, time flies so much because 20 plus years ago, of course, the industry was a little different.
Right.
At the time, I compared the legal aspect of timeshare of 10 different countries. So you can imagine over this period of time, a lot happened.
Right. So are you surprised what's happening today, especially in St. Maarten, or was it expected to happen?
Well, in fact, I'm saying as a scientist, as an expert on timeshare, no, I'm not surprised, because if you read my thesis at the time, I have identified many of the issues that we have today. I'm always saying timeshare, as we see it now, we can divide it in 4 stages. The first stage of the timeshare industry, the concept is the pre-sales time, and where the developer is looking for buyers. In fact, we passed the stage because most of our timeshare projects, our timeshare resorts, pass that stage. There are very few new properties selling timeshare. Of course, the concept, as I said, it changed, but it all boils down to the same thing, that people are purchasing a fraction of a year to spend in a resort. The second stage is the contracting stage, where the seller and the timeshare buyer is making a contract. The third stage, the maintenance stage, which we are in right now, and which is very important, but I will elaborate on why. And the fourth stage is the resale stage, which is also prevalent today. The first stage, the first 2 stages mentioned, I must say, after I defended my thesis in 1993, we had the situation at Pelican in 1995. I advised government at the time on the whole issue. In the meantime, in 2005, the Netherlands Antilles implemented a law on timeshare where you could, in fact, buy deeded timeshare. I must say, not many, if any, project here on St. Maarten made use of that possibility. So we have a lot of contractual timeshare agreements.
So then what you're saying, Dr. Arduin, is that St. Maarten is in fact different than the United States, because in the United States, timeshare owners receive a deed for their property.
Exactly, but there also in the States, there are different projects. You have deeded timeshare, where you get a deed and it has to be registered at a cadastre, at a land registry, or contractual. To protect the consumer that is buying a timeshare right, a contractual timeshare right, at the time, I made a proposal to take over some guidelines that the European Community had. And in 2005, those aspects also came into the law of the Netherlands Antilles and now, of course, the law of St. Maarten pertaining to consumer protection. However, I indicate the timeshare have different stages. The consumer protection measurements at that time were more geared at the sales technique, the first stage, and the contracting stage. However, in my thesis, I alerted about the maintenance stage and the resale stage. Why? After a project is sold out or almost sold out, the developer or the owner of the property has no more profit to make. However, maintenance of that resort, of that project, becomes extremely important, because if you buy something and it is not maintained, you cannot enjoy your timeshare right. And then you have the period of resale, where either the management company is reselling timeshare rights that previous owners want to sell, or the timeshare owner itself want to sell their timeshare rights.
I want to ask you, Dr. Arduin, to explain here, please, because the contractual agreement versus the deeded purchase, and this is hypothetical now,
yes.
Really. If St. Maarten had these timeshare owners purchase a deeded property, in other words, they receive a deed for their fraction of that timeshare, what would the outcome be? Will it be the same like today, what we're experiencing?
Of course not. Of course not. But it is always, since it's private, yes, one has the choice to either make a deeded an agreement or a contractual agreement. Having said so, there are also ways to protect the timeshare right in a contractual agreement. I will stipulate why. One of the main important things is the non-disturbance clause. A non-disturbance clause in a contract means that the right of the timeshare owner will go to the next purchaser of the property. And, or if you register that, yeah, that non-disturbance clause in the deed of the owner of the company, at the time that he sells it, the new buyer knows that there are timeshare rights and he has to respect it. Another way is also that, for example, if a property is auctioned, in fact, a property is auctioned bare. But if it is in the deed, even at auction, those rights will go over to the purchaser of that project, the new owner. Mm-hmm. I think there are some very cardinal things because we can detect bottlenecks. And I'm always saying you have to look at the solutions of those bottlenecks. Yes, it is a fact that most property, if not all, I think there's only one property on St. Maarten that have deeded timeshare. So we have to look at the contracts. In 2003, if I'm not mistaken, government made a law on licensing of timeshare. That law came into existence for St. Maarten in 2010, where certain conditions are stipulated. One of the important conditions is that there should be a kind of an internal rules and regulations which the minister has of a timeshare resort, which a minister has to review and approve. Those rules and regulations should be deposited at the courthouse. So that means that is one thing. As a matter of fact, I don't know if it is done for all timeshare projects and if it's really if all those rules and regulations, the internal rules and regulations, are really scrutinized by government and make sure that each resort lives up to those rules and regulations.
So there is a law to protect timeshare owners.
There are a lot of rules and regulations. My conclusion, and listening to a lot that is happening, I wonder if the rules and regulations are better, very well controlled. Yeah, because this law, for example, the licensing law, the vergunningslandsverordening, has an article specifically pertaining to timeshare. And that law is stipulating that 1 year after publication, all resorts should have their reglement, their rules and regulations. And that means that law is published, I think, somewhere February 2013. That means by February 2014, all timeshare projects should have rules and regulations which government had to approve and can follow to see if they are really upheld. Yeah. So, of course, I'm not. Since I'm the ombudsman and no longer functioning as an attorney, I did not delve into the current situation to know details, but I believe that government should look at these rules and regulations and transparency. In my thesis, I also indicated that it is so important that the buyer of timeshare know who they're buying for. Are they buying from the owner of the property? Are they buying from a developer? Are they buying from just a company that is charged with selling? Yeah. We see that, for example, there are, you have to look at the mortgages that are on the property. We see, for example, that people buying timeshare, they have to pay to a company in the States. That means if something happened here, there's no grip on the situation. If you buy, for example, from a selling company and not from the owner company, as a timeshare owner, your rights become very shaky because that seller is just the seller.
That some people pay to come in the States. But if you do that, then you're out of the jurisdiction of St. Maarten.
Exactly. And that is one thing, I think, as I mentioned in saying that, there are different aspects of the timeshare industry that government can look into. Mm-hmm. I mentioned the licensing and ordinance that have certain stipulations. I think that government should look closely into each timeshare project, the relationship between owners of the property, sellers of the property, developers, managing companies, and so mortgage holders. Yeah, most mortgage holders are indeed foreign mortgage holders. And so there are certain things that are a little tense, but we can look at these things. This is not something new, yes? And for everything, you can put certain things in place. As I said, the contracts, while there is this law that there should be internal rules and regulations, government can scrutinize those. In fact, government has to approve those before they come into being established. But policing whether those rules and regulations are really upheld is something else, something that government can do. Inspect the quality of the resorts. As I said, the maintenance becomes very important, yes? Inspecting the resorts for quality, for hygiene, for safety, those are things we don't even need new laws. because there are laws pertaining to hygiene. I must say, while the ombudsman, and I'm going there a while, right? Because I'm intertwining what government can do with the rights of the people, the protection of the consumer. There are timeshare owners that complain, for example, to the tourist bureau. So there is where we can look, okay, tourist bureau, you have the authority, check, bring in the inspection, the health inspection, the safety inspection, etc., to look at the quality, the status of these resorts. Yeah? So the maintenance is very important, because with all this that is happening, you get that you have people gonna abandon their timeshare rights, not paying maintenance fees. Another thing is, yes, they have to pay maintenance fees, but sometimes the maintenance fees gets sky high, and it's almost more beneficial to just pay for a night, yeah? Or the timeshare owner have no indication whether they pay for maintenance only or for refurbishing, yeah? So there are aspects that I think government can protect the industry, which is so important for the island, because you know that timeshare also have the exchange possibilities, where people can exchange their timeshare rights of the island with the other country, and that means other people that did not buy on St. Maarten can come here. I recently got notice that for certain resort, the exchange company is not allowing timeshare owners of this resort of St. Maarten to exchange their timeshare rights. I'm yet to investigate why. So all these things are very detrimental for our island. So I think there are possibilities and ways for government to get involved and do more checking. I also know that there is a draft law on the table. I must say, a very good initiative.
We're discussing timeshare problems. You mentioned just before the break about some draft law. Maybe you want to elaborate briefly.
As I said, Mr. Gibbs, I believe that government can play a more active role in this very important industry. I have seen a draft law on the matter. Yes, many aspects are being tackled in that draft law. I must also say, as I said in the beginning, timeshare is an industry that develops rapidly. The product changes very fast. So sometimes it is pretty difficult to keep up with the different products. However, looking in the future, as I did when I wrote my thesis, I could see the issues that we have now, then already. So I think with such a draft law, government can try to take measures for many of the ills that are there now. However, I must also indicate, while many entities have been consulted reading the elucidation on the law, I failed to see where they had directly timeshare associations involved. They had representatives of developers who have contact and experience and with timeshare on board to help draft the law, but I did not read in the elucidation on that law that timeshare associations, this the consumer organization, has been consulted and involved.
Well, and that was brought to my attention, and someone was telling me that's very closely connected to many timeshare owners, that they feel that the government of St. Maarten must involve the timeshare owners through their association.
I believe that is a fair enough request of timeshare owners, because, of course, as government, you have to help protect the investment of the developers, of the real estate owners. However, there are so many more persons involved as consumer, as timeshare purchasers. So I believe that while somebody representing the developer might have a view and knowledge of what is important to protect the consumer, as a past attorney, I know that you represent the interest of your clients first and foremost. So I think for balance, it is quite acceptable and understandable that the timeshare associations want to be heard.
Although you may have contracts and deeds, that's where issues come up and things can change, right?
Yes, you know, as I mentioned, I like to go back to those 4 stages. For the pre-sale stage, you know, selling, that those issues of about misleading information, pressure, etc., they have been handled by law. The stage of contracts have been handled because there are full disclosure clauses in the contracts, cancellation rights, refunding rights. Those things are regulated by law. But the maintenance stage, yeah, it is not just the law, but the control that government has to do on what is there in the law. If you say that property must have rules and regulations, internal rules and regulations, and have a list what those rules and regulations have to entail to protect the rights of the timeshare owner, it behooves government to check if it's being applied, if those rules and regulations are being upheld, because they are there to guarantee the quality of the resort. If there is a licensing law, it behooves government to see, hey, are the ones that have a license upholding that? It is like any other law, yeah, rule of law. If you don't police it, if you don't control it, yeah, that law becomes a dead letter. Yeah?
Yeah.
So I still believe, looking at the different laws that are on the table and the one that is in the making, that a lot can be taken up, yeah? Compliance. Compliance becomes very important.
Well, Dr. I want to thank you for being my guest this evening here in the program. And I don't know if there's anything else you want to add very quickly that I didn't ask you about. You have 30 seconds.
I believe that timeshare is here to stay. I definitely, in 1993, when I defended my thesis, I came to that conclusion. It's an international phenomenon. It's a product that indeed the people want, because people are traveling much more now than before. What we as a country have to do is make sure that that product is properly protected.
All right. Dr. Arduin, I want to thank you again for being my guest, and much success.
Thank you.
And that's it for now. I'll see you next time right here on Speaking of Everything. Until then, good night. Take care. Bye.